It was supposed to be just another quiet evening in a small Iowa town. A 20-year-old student, full of life and promise, Mollie Tibbetts, took a familiar path for a routine jog beneath the quiet glow of the summer sky. There was nothing unusual or alarming until Mollie disappeared somewhere along that path without leaving any trace. Her disappearance would plunge the town into a nightmare that no one could have ever imagined. And what police finally uncovered changed the small town forever. July 18, 2018, began like any other summer day in Brooklyn, Iowa. A quiet, tight-knit farming community, where people left their doors unlocked and waved to neighbors on the street. This Brooklyn wasn't the chaotic metropolis of New York. It was the kind of place where nothing bad ever seemed to happen. But by nightfall, that comforting illusion would crumble. What started as an ordinary summer day would erupt into a chilling mystery, one that would grip the nation and reveal a terrifying truth that Brooklyn never saw coming. At the heart of the story was Mollie Tibbetts, a vibrant and energetic 20-year-old young lady with an easy smile and a kind heart. Mollie had just completed her first year at the University of Iowa, and she had returned home for the summer. There, she took a temporary job at a children's summer camp. She spent time with her boyfriend and stayed connected to the small town life she cherished. To everyone around her, there was nothing in her life that hinted at trouble. And that evening, no one could have imagined that her world was about to take a dark turn. That morning, Mollie followed her usual routine. She headed to work at the Children's Day camp hosted by the Grinnell Regional Medical Center. To her colleagues, Mollie was just like herself, cheerful and full of energy. There was nothing unusual in her behavior, and no sign indicated that something was wrong. Mollie was the last to leave work, and around 5 p.m., her brother picked her up and dropped her off at her boyfriend, Jack. He had no idea that this would be the last time he would ever see Mollie alive. When Mollie arrived at Jack's house, everything felt calm. Jack was out of town for the night, and she had agreed to stay over to take care of his dogs. She had the place to herself and it felt familiar and safe. Around 7 p.m., Mollie was getting ready to go for a run. Before she left, she sent a quick text message to her mother and snapped a photo, which she sent to Jack. Then, she headed out, completely unaware that those small actions would be the last trace she left behind. That night, Mollie's family and friends believed she was exactly where she said she'd be, curled up on the couch at Jack's house, watching TV with the dogs after her evening jog. It was typical of her, comforting and ordinary. No one had any reason to worry, but no one knew that by the next morning, those quiet assumptions would collapse, and a nightmare would begin. As the next day broke, everything still looked the same, but no one sensed that the world had already shifted beneath their feet. Then came the call. Mollie hadn't shown up for work. Not a single message or call from Mollie, just a growing sense of dread. At first, it sparked concern, but no one was alarmed, until the chilling realization came. It had been more than 12 hours since anyone had heard from her. Panic started then to spread. Mollie's absence spoke louder than words, because she would never miss work without giving a notice. Behind her unusual silence, fear began to grow, and it whispered one chilling truth. Mollie must have been caught in something bad, and her safety was at risk. Soon, Mollie's friends and family all gathered at her mother's home, all drawn together by growing worry and unanswered questions. The quiet home, once a place of comfort, is now buzzed with tension. Quietly, they all reached a painful but unanimous decision. It was now time to call the police. When the investigation began, police started piecing together everything they could about Mollie. They wondered if Mollie had been in distress before she disappeared, if there had been any sign, even the smallest hint, that she might have hurt herself. Then, there was Jack, Mollie's boyfriend. Could he have been involved somehow? And was he truly out of town that night, like he claimed? Or was there something he wasn't saying, a part of the story he chose to leave out? At that stage, no theory was too small, or too far-fetched. But quickly, police were able to confirm Jack's alibi. He really was out of town that night. And as they looked deeper into Mollie's life, a clearer picture emerged. She was deeply loved by everyone who knew her. She was happy, active, and had no history or intention of harming herself. That left investigators facing two chilling possibilities. Either Mollie had suffered a tragic accident during her jog, or a stranger, someone with darkness in their heart, had crossed her path that night and done something unspeakable. With Jack's alibi confirmed, and no signs that Mollie would have hurt herself, police turned their attention to a far more urgent question: where was she last seen, and when? So they began retracing Mollie's final hours, trying to piece together a timeline that might explain her disappearance. And what they found was unsettling in its clarity. The last digital trace of Mollie was around 7 p.m., a photo she sent to Jack on Snapchat, and a quick text to her mother. Investigators were also able to trace the route Mollie took during her run. Using data previously recorded on her Fitbit, it gave investigators a digital trail, a glimpse into the direction she was headed, and where she may have gone missing. As the case began to gain attention, the search turned public. Volunteers gathered, combing through cornfields and country roads, clinging to the hope of Mollie alive. Then, a witness came forward, confirming she had seen Mollie jogging at around 7:42 p.m. And that was the last confirmed sighting of Mollie Tibbetts, alive. After that, there was just a loud and a terrifying silence. As the search went on, there was no trace of Mollie. None of her belongings had surfaced, no phone, or clothing, not even a footprint was found. And there weren't any signs of a struggle anywhere. Days passed, the search intensified, but still, no answers. The deeper investigators looked, the more frustrating the case became. Because Mollie couldn't just vanish, as if the earth had swallowed her whole. Somewhere out there, someone knew what happened to her. So with time slipping and leads running cold, police made a critical decision. They called in the FBI. Because this wasn't just a missing person case anymore, it was a mystery wrapped in silence. And when the FBI stepped in, the case took a sharp turn. They weren't just looking for a missing girl anymore, but they were chasing signals. Signals from Mollie's phone and her watch, digital footprints, but they told a chilling story. Between 8:15 and 8:25 p.m., Mollie was still on her evening run, moving at a calm, steady rhythm, about a 9-minute mile. Then, she stopped. 4 minutes of stillness. Maybe a break to catch her breath, or something far more sinister happened to her. Then, the data shifted, and something suddenly changed. Her device showed her moving again. 60 miles an hour. That's not a jog speed. That's the speed of a car moving. This meant that Mollie wasn't running anymore. She was taken by someone in a vehicle. And at 8:50 p.m., everything went dark. Her phone and her watch gone silent. No more signals or movement from Mollie. With these new leads, the question was no longer just where Mollie had gone. It became, who was she with, and more disturbingly, why? The last signal from Mollie's device showed her heading south, speeding away from Brooklyn, away from everything and everyone she knew. This could mean only one thing. Someone had taken her. She didn't just vanish. A presence had pulled her from that quiet trail and put her inside a vehicle. Either she willingly agreed to go, or she was forced to get in that car. The investigators knew what they had to do now. They need to find this mysterious vehicle in order to solve the case. The same car, that carried Mollie south and took her away from her family and the safety of her small town. So the police came up with a plan, a quiet and methodical strategy, and they turned their attention to the cameras, those surrounding the trail where Mollie liked to run. Relentlessly, the police reviewed countless hours of surveillance footage, because if a car had taken Mollie away, there was a small chance that somewhere it had been caught by a camera. And that was all they needed, a single glimpse, or a clue, lost in the background and waiting to be found. And it wasn't long before police found exactly what they'd been searching for. They found a recording that would finally point them in the direction of answers. Answers to the questions that had haunted everyone from the very beginning of this case. And among the flood of CCTV footage, one video stood out and caught the attention of the investigators. It showed Mollie running and alive. But Mollie wasn't the only thing in that frame. There was something else, a black car, circling and moving back and forth along the trail. It was circling again and again, as if the driver wasn't just passing through, but watching and waiting, like a predator, hunting his prey in the final moments, just before making his fatal move. The car in question was a black Chevy Malibu, but unfortunately, the CCTV footage was far from perfect. It was blurry and grainy, and not clear enough to see clearly the person behind the wheel. And in that haze, one detail stood out. The detectives noticed something odd. The side mirrors didn't match the car color at all. They were silver, a strange contrast on a black and dark vehicle. This wasn't common at all. It was like a clue that the driver left behind without meaning to. And this would soon become the thread that will unravel everything. Nearly 4 weeks had passed, and for Mollie's family, each day felt like an eternity. They were caught in a cruel limbo, trapped between hope and heartbreak. They prayed for answers, because sometimes, the only thing worse than bad news is not knowing at all. And then, as if it was by chance, or maybe something greater. Maybe it was divine justice. On August 16th, one of the agents assigned to the case spotted the car when he was simply driving back home. A black Chevy Malibu was just there in front of him. Not just any car, but exactly the same one they have been searching for. That car was just like the one in the footage. And those side mirrors were silver. To the officer, this couldn't just be a coincidence. It was as if fate had just rolled into view. And he immediately knew that this car was the key, and wherever Mollie was, it would lead him straight to her. The officer didn't stop once the Chevy disappeared from his rear-view mirror. He tailed it, quietly, at a distance, all the way to a modest house on the edge of town. Only then did he step out and make contact. When he finally spoke to the driver, the man seemed polite and calm. Maybe even a little too calm, but something didn't sit right with the officer. So 4 days later, he brought in the driver to the police station, and this time it was for a formal interrogation. The man behind the wheel was Cristhian Bahena Rivera, a farm worker in rural Iowa. To those who knew him, he was quiet and unassuming. From what he told to the police, he lived on the fringes and was undocumented, and he has entered the country illegally years earlier. To most, he was just another face, another laborer blending into the background. But soon, he would become the face of something much darker. When police approached Cristhian, at first, he seemed cooperative. He denied everything. He said he didn't know Mollie, and he had nothing to do with her disappearance. He denied any connection or involvement in this case. But then, when the officer showed him the footage of the black Chevy Malibu, his story began to crack, and it didn't take long until he confessed. And with that confession, a dark truth was revealed. Rivera didn't just admit to killing Mollie, but he also told the police exactly where to find her. According to Rivera, it all started with a glance. He said he saw Mollie jogging and found her attractive. So he followed her and tried to talk to her. But Mollie wasn't interested. She got angry and threatened to call the police on him. And this is when his story took a strange turn. He said that he blacked out. He claimed that he couldn't remember what happened. And when he woke up, he found Mollie's lifeless body in the trunk of his car. In a quiet cornfield on the outskirts of town, Mollie was there, hidden in plain sight for weeks. And just like that, what began as a search for a missing girl became the recovery of a body. The nightmare was no longer just a fear, it was a fact. And for Mollie's parents, the hope they had clung to for weeks was shattered in an instant. With Rivera's confession and Mollie's DNA found in his trunk, there was no longer any doubt that he killed Mollie. 4 years later, Cristhian Bahena Rivera was found guilty in court, and he was sentenced for life in prison, without any possibility of parole. To Mollie's parents, justice was served, yes, but justice isn't the same as peace. They got answers, but not the one they prayed for. But the hardest truth remained: Mollie was gone. Her parents would spend the rest of their lives missing the sound of her laughter and the warmth of her hugs.